Namaskar, good evening everyone. Behalf of Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine, I Dr. C.N. Galdar welcome you all. Before start our webinar, I do request Dr. R. Ram Prabhu sir, General Secretary of ISBM, to brief about today's webinar. Ram Prabhu sir, please.
Good evening, Galdar. So this is the first time we have changed to Sunday because of the busy schedule of our speaker. So at the outset, I welcome Dr. S. Epiraj, former Dean and former Director of Research, Karnataka Veterinary Animal Sciences University of Gujarat. And Dr. Epiraj is a very good teacher and a very good, one of the greatest practitioners in India. So we are very fortunate to have Epiraj on interpretation of ECG in dogs. Sir, on behalf of ISVM and the participants, I welcome you, sir, for this today's webinar. I also welcome all the participants, undergraduate students, PG students, faculty members, and also human practitioners for today's webinar. I also welcome my colleagues, Dr. Galdar, Dr. Nilesh, and Dr. Samruti, Dr. Sujit Kumar for today's webinar. I welcome one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I again welcome Yatiraj sir for today's webinar. Before delivering his webinar, I would like to introduce about the distinguished personality who is with us and delivering webinar on our ISVM forum. Dr. Yatiraj is presently working as Chief Executive at Lakeside Veterinary Hospital and Research Center at Bangalore. Sir was former officer on special duty at Veterinary College, Bangalore, Karnataka. Sir was former Dean Veterinary College, Bangalore, Director of Research, KVFSU, Bidar. Sir was former member of Veterinary Council of India, New Delhi, World Small Animal Veterinary Association, Global Nutrition Committee, Regional Representative of Asia Region, Commonwealth Veterinary Association. Sir is former member of Mysore Kennel Club, and very happy to share that sir also a former General Secretary of Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine. Currently, sir is President of Asian Veterinarian Association, President of Mysore Kennel Club, Patron of Pet Practitioners Association of Karnataka, member of Society for Indian Breeders of Dog, member of Kennel Club of India also. As far as the academic achievement of Dr. Yatiraj sir is concerned, he is very popular teacher among students. He has 35 years experience of teaching, 35 years of teaching experience. He guided 18 MUC students and 4 PhD students in subject of veterinary medicine. Sir published 678 research articles in peer-reviewed and journals of national and international repute. Sir also published 9 books in area of veterinary science. Sir handled more than 25 research projects funded by international, national, and private agencies. Sir is extensively traveled to foreign countries for delivering his talk. Among that, he has visited the countries like USA, Singapore, France, Zambia, Thailand, and Australia. Such an admiring personality is with us. He is a renowned academician, small animal practitioner. I do request sir to deliver his webinar. I welcome sir you again and requesting you to deliver today's webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrakant, for the wonderful introduction. Before I get on to the topic, respected President of ISVM, Dr. Navriyal, the General Secretary of the Indian Society of Veterinary Medicine, Dr. Ramprabhu, the webinar co-hosts and the host and coordinators, Dr. Chandrakant Galdar and Dr. Nilesh Sindhu, who have been meticulously working with me, all the members of the Society of Indian Society of Veterinary Medicine who are participating, and also certain of the practitioners who are on the list. Let me say thanks to the ISVM and the family for inviting me for this lecture, and all others who have been here on a Sunday evening to participate and in the post scenario of the COVID, what we talk of, and to talk on diseases, particularly on the cardiac way. And before I start again, very thankful to all the executive committee members of the ISVM for keeping pace with what's happening in the global scenario today. And I've been conducting very many webinars of concern, of real interest to the academicians as well as the practitioners. Compliments to all of you. Hope you'll keep up the pace, and days to come, you will have many more of this kind of ways which will be beneficial to everybody and probably to the practitioners and also to the animal community for a better life in future. Thank you, and let me start my talk.
So please share your presentation, sir.
Yeah, right, I'll start with that.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second. Let me go back and think I started with the home page and I should start with that. I've gone to the end, I think. 1 second. Let me go back again and come to that. 1 second. Let me go back to the home page and come again. Yes. Hope I am visible to everybody.
Yes, sir. You are visible and audible, sir. You can
Audible.
start.
Let me start on that. Okay. Now, the topic that I've been assigned today, and I'm sure everybody will be interested, will be to talk on the interpretation of ECG in dogs. And why this interpretation? Probably you all know that all of us have a foolproof method of recording. We have the paper with us, and what do we do with that? Is it like a receipt? Is it like a pay bill? 100%. We go to a tall shop or any place, you have a bill and it is transparent. So this ECG, what you have is very transparent, and what we talk about it matters a lot, and you cannot really kid with anybody. That's the reason why we need to have a good understanding of this ECG and interpret that in the right way. Now let me come back. What are the diagnostic tests available to evaluate the heart? Very many of them, starting from history, clinical manifestation, palpation, auscultation, thoracic radiography. Let me move on and say cardiac CT, cardiac MRI, echocardiography, lot many invasive and sophisticated tests, hematology and biochemistry. Of all these, what I'm going to talk to you today is an electrocardiography, and which is only one of the tools, and it is not the only tool for assessing the cardiac anomalies and cardiac diseases. So bear it in mind that what we are talking of today is ECG as a tool for us, and how do we interpret that? That is the crux of the whole talk that's going to be today. Now, what is an ECG? It could be called an ECG, but it could also be called as an EKG. Since I'm talking to the elite of the medical society, the veterinary medicine society, I don't think I'll waste a lot of time on the basics of that, just to make a mention that still some books would use EKG instead of calling it as ECG. Let me not go into typical of what's going to happen there, just to brush up as to what we are talking and what is that does. This is the basic of that. What is the cardiac conduction system? Because the tracings of ECG, like the P wave, the QRS, and the T wave, is the effect of this cardiac conduction system. So what we talk of is all these. Again, let me not bore you. This is the SCA node, and then comes the AV node, and then you have the Purkinje fibers, and the left bundle branch, the right bundle branch, and the common bundle phase, and there are internodal tracts. So when we talk of an ECG, when it is initiated here as an SCA node activity, it traverses through the atrium, then the ventricles, and then moves on to. And this is what you're typically recording as an ECG. And now probably understand why we need to know this. Once we know this, we can very well say what I'm talking about is conduction anomaly. Is it in the atrium? Is it in the ventricle? Or it is in the AV node junctions, or as it traverses through? Now, what can be diagnosed by an ECG, or what is the utility of the ECG? The first and the foremost, anybody would talk that ECGs are useful for identifying the cardiac arrhythmias. They are useful to talk about chamber enlargement. You can ascertain the electrolyte imbalance like the sodium, potassium, calcium, and these levels. myocardial ischemia, hypoxemia, drug intoxication, quite a number of the drugs which would have an effect on the cardiac system. I'm sure all of us are aware that many of the medicaments which are being to the market today have to go through the cardiac studies, and ECG becomes one of the criteria. It could also be used for thoracic and pericardial effusions, obviously to talk about the pulmonary system as well as the cardiac system. It could also be used for assessing the alterations of sympathetic and the parasympathetic tone. Could be very well used for a differential diagnosis, certain times directly when you have no time to do a biochemistry, directly to assess the hyperkalemia because we just got a direct impact, but particularly when you have the renal failure patients. Maybe currently anybody would talk that you need to go through, apart from what we talk of the vital signs monitoring, you also need to do the health certificate based on the ECG, and this becomes a special purpose requirement, particularly when the dogs are inducted into a very specific purpose, more particularly for the police department, the border security, or wherever the security dogs are being maintained. And ECG becomes a criteria to talk about the health of the animal. The procedure for recording an ECG, all of us know very well. Let me just quickly go through this. Animal to be placed on non-conductive surface in right lateral recumbency. Please bear it in mind. The animal has to go to the right lateral recumbency. Limbs to be perpendicular to the long axis of the body. No chemical restraint generally, but very rarely can go in for the sedatives. Then the clips attached over the very specific area. I'm talking about the dog. In the forelimb, you need to use them, and in the hind limb on the right areas and that. In the forelimb, proximal to the elbow joint, whereas in the hind limb is over the patellar ligament. That is the anterior aspect of it. The hind limb, it is the anterior aspect. In the forelimb, it is the posterior aspect of that. The skin and electrode to be moistened with a commercially available paste or a gel. Why I mention about this is many times people use interchangeably ultrasound jelly. Generally, I would say, because I've been using cardiology as one of the benchmarking in my hospital, I would say please use the cardiac jelly rather than the ultrasound jelly for recording the ECG. If you can't get a cardiac jelly, you could use alcohol, it's much better. You could also use the soap solution and then mix alcohol. That becomes a good conductor rather than an ultrasound jelly. Ultrasound jelly is more a barrier to trap probably what you want in an ultrasonography machine. And I would rather tell everybody stating that use the cardiac jelly rather than an ultrasound jelly. Now, when you talk of the calibration, what is necessary for this is you need to calibrate the machine as well. You have different kinds of the machines, which I'll come to a little later. The ECG machine is calibrated so that you will get 1 MV, that means 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter is equal to 1 MV. These are all standard. You could also use 2 centimeter is equal to 1 MV. Thus, if you call 1 centimeter is equal to 1 MV, every millimeter becomes a 0.1 millivolt. In case you get a too small a recording, you can increase it to 2 centimeters is equal to 1 MV. And if it's too large, you can reduce it to 0.5. You have all these adjustments on the machine itself, starting from the basic machine to the modern machine that you want to use. You have the option of recording the ECG at 25 millimeter per second and 50 millimeter per second. And you need to write on your ECG papers if you're doing it manually. But if you're doing it by the modern machines, it will talk to you about what is the kind of speed that you have used on the ECG paper itself. So you need to, before reading an ECG, look at all these and then start working on that. These are the early that you connect. Many times these are all stainless steel or chromium plated. Sometimes you can have the buttons. If you don't get anything, you could buy the crocodile clips and connect it onto your ECG machines of these, and which you need to adjust because the tightness of them is very high. The spring action is very good. It can create little amount of pain. And if you, when you apply this kind of clips over the skin, they're too tight, the jaws would create little pain and there'll be muscular twitching and which will be reflected on the ECG. So you need to adjust all these and then standardize them and then do that. You have the names for all these. I'm sure all of us know about it. Let me go back. This is just to remember, because whenever we talk of ECG, I always remember ECG has been in area because it has produced quite a number of Nobel laureates. Maybe we all know, like one of the great personalities, Ian Toven, and Ian Toven got a Nobel Prize later, initially started working on ECGs of that, and then probably quite a lot of people, Darrell is another who worked a lot on the cardiac systems as well as in the ECG in dogs. These are the earliest method of recording an ECG. Look at this, the animal being placed in, this is the glass container containing the brain solution, that is the sodium chloride, and all dipped there, and this is put onto a wire connected onto a galvanometer and then recorded in ECG. From there we started and moved on to ECG recording in this fashion, where you had a big machine as if it looked like a big generator, and position of the animal, all these are important. And that as we advance, this is the electrode connection. Typically when we talk of, this is the forelimb area, this is the hind limb area, and this is a male dog, and the legs are to be perpendicular, and see that these electrodes don't touch each other. This is pretty important. If you do that, you get lots of aberrations in the ECG. Now, these are all the leads that we talk of. I'm sure all of us know very well what's going to happen in lead 1, lead 2, lead 3. And all these, what is more important for us is lead 1 and lead 3 is equivalent to lead 2. Obviously, that is the reason why whenever you talk of a survey ECG, do it more in the lead 2, and then if you have a choice, we can do in all others. But lead 2 becomes very important at that. There are all the unipolar leads, what you talk of AVR, AVL, AVF. All these you just need to connect the electrode and onto the galvanometer, and then you get the tracing on that. This is the polarity when we talk of how it does it work, how does it move, what is positive, what is negative there. Let me not spend too much of theory on that. From the regular, it went on to a trans-telephonic ECG. I think we all have heard of. You can connect the ECGs like this, and this is a telephonic connection. You can talk to the doctor and hear to what's happening, the kind of sound that is going to be happening there. This was the next advancement that happened, and currently people talk of a Holter ambulator. It's called as a Holter ECG, and this is like a small pack, like our any of the credit card, which is connected onto the here and then placed over there. And this animal can move all around in the house and in your hospital. If you are a practitioner at home, you can look at this ECG of this dog sitting in your house and monitor the patient. Now, this is a crux of what it is, and now majority of the machines, what you get is a multi-channel machine from a single channel. This was a single channel machine wherein you would record lead 1, 2, 3, AVR, AVL, AVF, and just leads. Whereas this is wherein you get is a multi-channel. Either you can record 3 channel at a time or 6 channel at a time, and you will get all your readings goes on. And then you also get a bit of interpretation, but they are all the medical machines, so you cannot rely upon for animal interpretation. Leave that. Just a thing on the ECG paper. You need to, because you need to basically understand what is that we are talking about. This is standard methodology 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a 0.5 ME. Each millimeter is 0.1. And when you run it like this, the whole of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 can make out again here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is 0.1 second. And each of this is 0.0 second if you do that way. These are important for us because when we start analyzing the ECG, maybe this is without a paper, this is how it looks like. Look at a PQRST wave. When we talk of a P wave, this is because of the atria, and then QRS is of the ventricles when we talk of the depolarization and the repolarization. Majority of us talk about a PQRST. P, what is the beginning? Let us go back later. These are the baseline, and from the baseline where it deviates is the P starting, and where it comes to the baseline is the P ending. So this, the whole of this is called the P wave. If we have to talk of a PR, we should start from here and not at the mid. Similarly, not at the R here. We'll come back to this a little later. So this is the depiction of a PQRST for the other class. So repolarization and depolarization for the auricle, ventricle, repolarization and depolarization. One would produce a QRS and a T. This is of the ventricle, whereas the P, when we talk of the auricle, the QRS depolarization is so strong, the P depolarization gets masked in it, and you don't get a wave at all. That's why we have 3 waves rather than 4 waves, and that let me get back. When you calculate, how do we calculate is very important. Look at it. This is the P wave, and here is the Q point, and here is the R wave, and this is the S wave, and S ends here. So when we talk of P wave, where it moves from the baseline, comes back to the baseline is the P wave width. PR, when we talk of the PR interval, look at this is the beginning of the Q wave. So PR should not be started to the R here, where it deviates from the baseline, and this is the PR. This is pretty important for us because we talk in terms of the AV blocks of heart. When we talk of first degree, second degree, third degree blocks, these become very important for us. Similarly, QRS, this is not just QRS. This is not the Q point. The Q point is here. Q is a negative wave, R is a positive wave, S is a negative wave, T is a positive wave. So when we talk of QRS, where the deviated from the baseline Q and where the S came back to the baseline, the whole thing becomes the QRS. Look at here. This is the QRS. And then the QT interval. And this is the QRS duration. This is the PR duration. This is how it has to go on. Let me put the same thing on to this. And you know very well, this is a lead 2. This is a 50 millimeter per second recorded. So all that what I talked there, this is the magnitude. This is in MV. Probably you can make out. Here is the baseline. The baseline is not put onto the dark line. We always call as, this is called as a small box. This is called a big box. 5 into 5 is a big box, and each of the single is called as a small box. So here is 1, 5, 6 plus 4, 10. So what has been put here as 10 millimeter is equal to 1 MV is the standard what has been put on. So now when we calculate the P, each of these is 0.1. So 1, 2, and 3. So this becomes 0.3 MV. Very easy to calculate. Similarly, duration, when you talk of, each of these becomes 0.02. So you have 0.04 as the duration, which also again becomes a normal. That's how we need to calculate. This is Q point here and not here. Probably this is what we need to understand Q, and then the interpretation starts in a good way. So remember, P wave, Q point here, this is the QD point, this is the R wave, and here is the S wave. This is the S wave under this, and this here, yes ended here, did not go to the baseline, and here is the baseline. So this is the S wave here, yes ended here. This is a T wave, which is a T negative wave. T can be positive or negative. And this is the starting of another P wave. This is one cycle. Okay, now let's move on. Understanding that makes us to know how do I interpret. That means I have a good ECG with me. Now look at that ECG. What is that? Is the rate fast or slow? Tachycardia or bradycardia? Is the rhythm regular or irregular? The moment you hold an ECG paper across you on the table, check for this. If irregular, are there premature beats? Are there P waves and are they of normal morphology? Is there a P wave for every QRS complex? Similarly, are the QRS complex normal, abnormal? Look at these first. You look at these first, and if your answers are yes for all these, then probably you can calculate all these. That means this is a P, this is a QRS, and this is a T wave. And now when we calculate, this is what you get. This is the normal duration. This is the normal amplitude. Amplitude, this is normal. Point, very easy to remember. 0.4 is the amplitude, and this is the duration. 0.4, 0.04. Each one we said in the paper is 0.02. Hence, this is one is 0.02, the second is 0.02, this becomes 0.04. So this is a normal P duration. And amplitude 0.4 is normal, whereas here this is 1 MV, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. This is 0.3 MV. We have said 0.4 is normal. This is how you're going to calculate in each of these rather than going by what the machine gives you. Similarly, calculate the PR interval, and this PR interval is pretty important for us. Look at this duration of this and calculate up to 0.13 second is normal. If there is more than that, it is abnormal. Similarly, QT interval and T interval and R of this. Normally, T wave is 25% of the R wave. And what is the R wave amplitude? It is between 2.5 to 3 MV in majority of the dogs. And if they are bigger breeds, it can be more than 3. It can go up to 3.5. QRS, 0.06. Q dip, this is the Q dip, up to 0.6 is normal beyond the stocks of an hypertrophy. Now let us go back. This is a single channel recording. Look at this. Now we should look at and say whether this is a ECG that I can read. I'm sure I'll say this is a P wave. Baseline is above. Normally baseline is always set above that because easy to record. This is the P point. Here is the Q, R, S, and T. So this is regular, another PQRST. That means this is a normal, good recording on a single channel. This is lead 2, but I would now say, how do we interpret? Given a choice to me, I will not interpret because it is not mentioned in this ECG paper as to at what speed it has been recorded. Either it is at 25 millimeter per second or 50 millimeter per second. But generally, cardiologists accept that if we don't write anything, it is considered as 50 millimeter per second speed. So you can calculate like that. But if you want to be very precise, you need to mention the speed at which it has been recorded. This is a multi-channel ECG. When you do this, probably you can make out what are the kind of things that you have. This is lead 1, lead 2, lead 3, and then after a couple of complexes recorded here, you have the AVR, AVL, AVF, and this is V1, V2, V3. We normally don't take these V1, V2, V3. We need to calculate and record separately for the cardiac. These are the exploring chest leads. We say exploring lead or a chest lead, and the connections are different for dogs, these recordings. And to those who are interested, probably I'll give those later. Once you have to say this is a normal ECG, you need to understand what are the artifacts. That's most important. It's something like always, good and bad. If you know about bad, good is very easier. Good is only one, bads are many. So if you have had a muscle tremor, that means you pinched the muscle by your alligator clips and you get tracings like this. Probably you can make out all these. Anybody would say these are all P waves and probably call it as atrial flutter or atrial fibrillation. You can talk about all these, but imagine there is a P wave here, not a good way. This is a QRS, all these, and this occurred because of the muscle tremors. Muscle tremors could be both ways, shivering, excitement, pinching, animal has got pain, all these are possible. This is an abnormality and this is not to be done on that. And next comes, again, probably look at these. Sorry. This is again, this is the artifacts of this when you can make out R's of different kinds of heights are happening onto this. This is again an artifact onto that. This is the electrical interference. This can happen when you are connecting your ECG machine to an electrical line and probably the grounding wire current is much higher than the current what we are using. You get serrations of all these kind, and this ECG cannot be interpreted at all, and this is no good at all. Absolutely not to interpret them at all. This is an electrical interference. So the room that you are using in your hospital, check the conductivity, check the earthing point. This directly amounts to that. The earthing is not good, number one. Number two, from the point electrical point on the earthing line, there has been an electrical flow, which is again because of bad conduction. You need to be careful about that. This is a wandering baseline. As the animal keeps moving, this is because of respiratory movement. It can happen like this. You can make out, you started a baseline here, came down, went up like this, And what is that we're going to record? Where is the baseline for us? So you got a wave here, and probably it is just to convince somebody that I got a ECG recording. And this ECG is not for interpretation. And this is because of the respiratory movement it's happening. Similarly, as you have been recording, the handler, the owner, or the attendant to the animal gets exhausted. So he starts moving the limb to back and fro, and you get recordings like this. You get R wave here, and probably nothing of this, and you cannot interpret this ECG. Maybe you just have to say that this is not a good ECG and redo that again. These are other ways, because this doesn't happen in the multi-channel new machines. This happens in the old models, which I don't want to mention the model names. When you use your stylus and there's a squirter and this is a thermosensitive paper, you can increase the temperature. When you increase the temperature of that, you get a thick drawing like this, wherein you cannot appreciate the P waves, the Q point, you cannot record your PRs, QRS, etc., etc. So this is again not a good way. Now, then what is that? That means now all these errors we are taken care of, and we have a good ECG with us. Now let us start interpreting. What we can do by that ECG? ECG interpretation could be for a heart rate, cardiac rhythm, rhythm disturbances, measurement of amplitude, and the interval. This is what we need to do. How do we calculate? The new machines will give you the heart rate as well. It will give you directly. Whereas the earlier machines, and if you still people are using the earlier machines, I wouldn't say that you should go for that, because the earlier machines are quite cheaper. They cost you anything between 15 to 20,000. And recently there has been Bark Bombay has produced a machine which might cost just 2,000 rupees. You can keep it in your pocket and you can record this ECG. And there, when you do this, what you need to do is, it doesn't give you all that. If you have a good ECG, now this is called the PQR. These are called the R points. And the speed at which it is recorded is here 50 millimeter per second. If you have recorded at 50 millimeter per second, now count the number of small boxes between the two R complexes, which is the peak point here. How do we count them? Each one box is 5. So 1, 2, 3, this is 15, 4th is here, 20, 1 is here, 21, and this is 324. So the number of small boxes between two R's is 24. And if you have done at 50 millimeter per second, divide 3000 divided by 24, which will give you the number of heart rate. It is the 125 beats per minute is what you get it. If it is done at 25 millimeter per second, then obviously, or theoretically, hypothetically, if you have to calculate, this will be 1500 divided by 24. Obviously, this becomes 62 beats per minute. This is how we calculate the heart rate. You could also do it by the cycles. That may not complicate that. This is the simplest method. The number of small boxes between two R complexes, and then find out whether you are at 50 or 25. If it is 50, 3000 divided by 24. If it is at 25, 1500 divided by 24 is the heart rate. This is the most important thing to get it. Whether this is of a normal rhythm is most important. How it's happening. That means there should be a P wave, there should be a QRS, there should be a T wave. And also, for every P wave, there should be a QRS. For every QRS, there should be a P wave. Look at this. That means P wave, QRS, T, P, QRS, T goes on like this. So that means we have a normal sinus rhythm, which is what is wanted in this. So you need to assess this. Now, once you do that, then now let us say we know how to calculate all the values. We have a good ECG. Now let us come back and say where all we are going to use the ECG for our interpretation of that. Can we use it for the chamber enlargement? What is the chamber enlargement? We can say atrial enlargement, left, right, biatrial. Similarly, ventricular enlargement. Again, you can say left or right or biventricular. Auricles and ventricular, both enlargements. These are the enlargement what you can talk of. People might say, sir, why do you talk about an ECG for a chamber enlargement? Why not? In echocardiography and the biometry, we can easily get it. Yes. If you have an echocardiography or a Doppler, you can very well do that. If you don't have, then ECG still you can depend on that, and it will give a good guide for you. We said, now we are concentrating on two things. P waves are related to atria, QRS is related to the ventricles. What all we talk about the P wave corresponds to the atrium. What all we talk about the QRS corresponds to the ventricle. So let us concentrate like this. P is greater than 0.4 MV. This talks about a severe chronic respiratory disease like bronchitis, pneumonia, congenital heart defects, and you call this condition as P pulmonale. P more than 0.4. That means this could be for a respiratory problem and also for a congenital heart disease. But since it is more associated with the respiratory problem, this is called as P pulmonale. Duration, if the duration of this, we said earlier, two boxes run at 50 millimeter, 0.04, if it's more than that, it is greater than 0.4, also indicates an atrial enlargement. And this could be seen in cardiomyopathy, plenty of the cardiomyopathy. You can see them in boxers, you can see them in the Dobermans, Cocker Spaniel, Springer Spaniel, American Cocker Spaniel, Dachshunds, Beagles, so many you get like that. And also the terriers, the wetland terriers, you get many of them. So it could be seen in cardiomyopathy, it could be seen in congenital heart defects, it could be seen in acquired mitral valvular insufficiency. So it indicates that this could be all that when you talk about an atrial enlargement. That means both P wave is greater than 0.4, duration is more than 0.04, and there's a P notching. This could be because of chronic hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Again, cardiomyopathy, when you talk of hypertrophic, the wall is thickened in them. Let us not go into the total detail of this, but this is a clear indication to say that these kind of situations needs an echocardiography to be done. Let's look at the ECG. How does it look like? This is a pictorial way of depicting. Let us not worry too much about that. See, for example, this is what we talked about. This is the 0.04, and this is what we said on earlier ECG, wherein we said 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. So when we talk of this, when we talk of this duration here, each one, 1, 2, this is more than that. So that's why it becomes a 0.06 second. And here it's a 0.3 millivolt. And this is the kind of is when you talk of more than 0.4 is this, and this is more than 0.04. So there is both P pulmonale and P mitral, which talks about biatrial enlargement. This is how an ECG would apply. P pulmonale, when we talk of, look at this. We said earlier 1 we have left, and this is 4 and 4. This is 0.8 as against 0.4. This is P pulmonale. Each one of them, look at this. This is 5, 6 plus 2, 8. Here 5 plus 2, 7 plus 1, 8. Everywhere it is 0.8. And T is a negative wave, no issue about that. T can be negative. Now, P mitral, again, let me leave that. Let us not come back to. Now, when we say biatrial enlargement, look at both of these. When we talk of P and the duration, both are different here. There are 3 boxes here. That means 0.06, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 2.6. That's why this is a biatrial enlargement. No change in the configuration of the P waves. You don't find like the earlier one, it's almost becoming like a bizarre way of P wave, and you don't have that P peaking. And this is again exhibiting P pulmonale and P mitral, indicating a bilateral atrial enlargement. And here again, you will definitely agree with me and ask me a question later. So nothing is written there. Yes, these are all manual ECG tracing. That's why I again put it. These are all done at 50 millimeter per second. Now let's move on to the ventricles. So when we talk of ventricles, it has to be the QRS. So what is depicted in this? Q is a point, R is a point, S is a wave. So S waves in lead 1 greater than 0.5 MV indicates a right ventricular enlargement. This could be seen in cardiac defects, pulmonic stenosis, pulmonary hypertension, heart tone, hyperthyroidism, so many conditions. Not that it is a specific diagnosis for them. Why I'm talking about the condition is you need to understand that ECG could be a clue to certain of them, and then think about this and obviously can make a diagnosis of this. This is a deep yes right ventricular enlargement. Where is that? Let us look at this. This is PQRS. Now let's come back to here. This is a P wave. Leave this. This is the previous T wave. This is a P wave. This is Q. This is R. And here is the yes. How many yes? 5. Another 5 here. 10 plus 4. 1.4 is the yes. So that's why it's called as a deep S wave. Deep S wave is an indicator of right ventricular enlargement. Left ventricular enlargement, you talk about the R wave there. R is more than 3 MV. Duration of QRS is more than 0.05. There's an ST coving. So all these if we get, we call it as left ventricular. Where do you find them? You find them in mitral insufficiency, that is mitral valve insufficiency, aortic valve insufficiency, aortic stenosis, dilated cardiomyopathy. We talk so much about dilated cardiomyopathy these days. You have bigger breeds, dilated cardiomyopathy is pretty common. Of late, even amongst the pugs is very common. So dilated cardiomyopathy, early indicators, RECG, you can depend on that. Look at this kind of a R. What is this? Probably look at this. This is a clinical case recording. Q dips are going. This is again a Q dip. This is not yes, this is Q. Look at that. How many? 1, 2, 3. Here, plus 4, 7. And R? You can look at the R. Variation in the R. So many of them, not in one line. Again, this could be because of altered breathing, heart rates, etc. If you look at the R, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, becoming like more than 5 MV. And this has been recorded at 1 MV is equal to 0.5 centimeters. This is also the initial part of that. You can make out the purpose of my putting this is, you look at this part, these are all electrical interference. And the second part became towards normal, and later recording became very well on that. You can appreciate electrical interference in the recording of the first part of the ECG, and the later part became normal. So in the same animal, you need to adjust sometimes and make a recording, which is very important. This is the left bundle branch blocks when you talk of these. Each of these bundle branch blocks, let me not talk too much about that. Let me move on quickly. This is the biventricular enlargement, wide R, DQ, ST curving. The point what I want to talk about ST curving is something different. You can look at the wide R. This is the wide R when you talk of. This is the wide R. And then this is the Q dip. Gain 5 plus 3, 8.8 it is. As I said earlier, 0.6 normal and that. And then most important, look at this ST curve. This is called ST. This is a T wave. SS ended here. This is called ST curving. This is very important. When you look at that, people talk of what is that you need to do in an ECG? Look at the morphology of the ECG. What is the morphology? Study them individually like this, expand them. Look at what it is. If it is not visualizable, keep a magnifying glass and do it. You'll appreciate it better. Tall and wide R left ventricular enlargement. This is, look at the R's. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 3.3 plus another 4, 3.7 R's. As we said earlier, 3 is the maximum that you take it as. You could take in that way and then put it down. Right bundle branch block, again, all these bundle branch blocks are private. So what we can put it as, ECG is not a very sensitive tool for assessing the chamber enlargement. However, it's a very good guide. But later use other methodologies. What are the other methodologies? Radiography as well as echocardiography, ultrasound, or the Dopplers are very best for chamber enlargement. Now let's come back on to cardiac arrhythmia. This is the most important and very interesting for ECG. What is that we talk of cardiac arrhythmia? Abnormalities in the rate, regularity, and site of origin of the cardiac impulse. The disturbance in the conduction of the impulse such that a normal sequence of activation of atria and ventricles is altered. This is what we talk of. To do this, the first and the foremost that you talk of is probably this is what you talk in terms of cardiology. You should have a very good stethoscope. This is the basic thing. I keep telling every day, every time, and I should not repeat this because these are all elite medicine people who are all cardiologists. Have a beautiful or a good stethoscope is most important. You can auscultate an animal in the sitting posture. You could preferably auscultate in the standing posture. If standing is not possible, then do it in the sitting posture. Lateral recumbencies are not advisable for a thorough auscultation, for a good auscultation. If you can do it in the standing position or in the sitting posture like this, is very good. What else you need to do? This is called simultaneous palpation and percussion. You are hearing to the heart rate and then you are feeling the pulse. Probably when I say feeling the pulse, I repeat again and again. Some of my students might think, I'm repeating the same kind of dialogues again and again. I think in the current day, I don't think nobody feels the pulse of the people. They only feel the pulse of the people. If the pulse is big, you are a great man and you can do all the tests. But this is where we talk of. You auscultate, count the number of heartbeats, and here you count the femoral. You are holding the femoral vein there and palpating the pulse of that. Count that. If there is a difference between the heart rate versus this is what you typically call as, probably you can very well say, a pulse deficit. And pulse deficit is the first indicator of arrhythmia. You might. This could be 80, this could be 79. Doesn't matter. One, make no difference. But on the contrary, if the count of the heart rate is 85 and a pulse is 80, definitely it's to be called as a pulse deficit. And this needs 100% a ECG and add with the ECG recording. Now, once we did that, you get like this. Why I put this is to appreciate for you. Normally, maybe on the day one, when I did a ECG, when I got like this, I went to the teacher and said, I got a case which is very bad. Look at the R's, look at the R between the space between the two R's. And looking at all this, I said, oh, something abnormal to anybody. Now, if you look at it on the graph like this, when you get this kind of a way, PQRS, you have continuously, these are the RR intervals. What's happening? 1, 2, 3, 4, 14 plus 1, 15, 15, 14, again 10, 12 plus 12, 14. So this is coinciding with the inspiration and this is coinciding with the expiration. So there's a bunch of QRS complexes of one amplitude and kind of duration. And again of this is what we talk of typically sinus arrhythmia. And this kind of sinus arrhythmia is normal in dogs. This is most important. They do not need any medication. They are very normal. Now, again, when you look at this is again another sinus arrhythmia. Sorry, this is sinus tachycardia. This is sinus tachycardia. You can look at them. When you look at this is at 50 millimeter, and when you calculate, probably you get tachycardia, which is of a particular nature. Again, doesn't need any kind of interpretation. This ECG of a dog suffering from ascites exhibiting cardiac arrhythmia, P waves, probably you don't see a P wave at all. This is thick, no doubt about it. No P waves at all. Look at that. No. And you can see notching of the R wave. This is where we said morphology to be studied of each wave. And you can look at the notching of that. This is a thick tracing, not very good. So this dog with cardiac arrhythmia probably going in for a congestive heart. This is, now we come back on to atrial premature contractions. Now what's happening here? This is a P wave, QRS and a T wave. When we talk of waves in this, you should understand, and I'm sure all of us have to recapitulate ourselves and say, not all the complexes are abnormal. There can be normal complexes followed by an abnormal complex. This is a normal complex. You have a P, you have a QRS, you have a T. Look at here what's happening. This is the P and this is T actually. That means QRS did not occur here. QRS occurred here. That means for every P, we had said there should be a QRS. For every QRS, there should be a P. Now, there's a P and there is no QRS. And the next, this is a T wave and this started a QRS. That means this is a P wave, QRS, there's a P. That's why it is called a atrial premature contraction. When you get these kind of atrial premature contractions of these are totally different. And you can very well say, why is this due to? You will find them in AV valve insufficiency, probably even in drugs like digitalis, you get that, and doesn't indicate much of that. This is atrial tachycardia. You see them, so many, P, and you got QRS, T, then P, then again P, P and T superimposed, P and T superimposed. So this is typically atrial tachycardia. So you get this kind of atrial tachycardias, meaning to say when the earlier APCs continuously occur, it becomes a phenomenon like this. This is typically what we talk of atrial flutter. These are represented as capital F. You don't find a normal P wave at all. This is a QRS, and here is a T wave. This is a T wave return, difficult to say. Series of them like the curvings as the edges of a sawtooth. And now all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all these are P waves. This you call it as a atrial flutter. And many a times when you calculate this, it could be more than each of these beats. If you calculate, it works out to be something around more than 300 beats per minute. This can happen in ruptured cardiac tendinae, septal defects, tricuspid valve dysfunctions or dysplasia. This could also be probably sometimes you put them under digoxin or pericardial shock necessary for the treatment. And from the flutter, what do you get now? You have a normal QRS here. This is a T wave. These are difficult again, but QRS, T, and look at these, each of these is called a small f. The small f's are always referred to as the fibrillation, and that because they are so smaller, and the P waves are almost absent here, no P waves here, and they give an impression as if there is a small, each of them is a wave. They are just conducting very mildly. This is the, it can be 4, it can be 3, it can be only 1, it can be 2, anything can happen. All these are P waves again. This is the atrial fibrillation. P waves are absent in this, and the atrial activity continuous will flow like a wave. This can be seen in atrial arrhythmias, congenital heart diseases like the ventricular septal defect, cardiac trauma, then cardiomyopathies. You can see these in all these conditions. This is similar to that. Atrial fibrillation from a 3-year-old male grade A. This dog developed dilated cardiomyopathy 18 months later. You have no P at all. All these are fibrillations. Again, fibrillations. Yes. This is sinus bradycardia. When we talk of the sinus bradycardia, 50 millimeter. Now look at the number of boxes. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 into 5, 60. Okay, 60, and then another 4 here, 64. 3,000 divided by 64. That is the kind of beat. It's going to less than even probably 60. So consistently, anything less than 60 beats is considered as bradycardia. It could range anything between 45 to 60 during sleep, but in an active dog, if it is less than 60, you should consider them as pathological. Pathological conditions are exercise, sometimes excitement. It could also be seen in respiratory diseases, gastric irritation, increased CSF pressure. Hypothyroidism is very, very important. Hypothyroidism, there is always a bradycardia. Hypothermia, hyperkalemia, hypoglycemia, all can produce this sinus bradycardia. This is what we talk of sick sinus syndrome, wherein this is quite common in Cocker Spaniel, American Cocker Spaniel, West Highland Terriers, Dachshunds, Doberman, Boxers. They all can end as syncope many a times. They go out for a walk in the morning, then they say they had a syncope and they go collapsed. Can be very bad on that. And you can see the no kind of wave being occurring there. And these are very bad. And sometimes, what you need in these cases are the typical pacemaker implantations are necessary. And in India now, some places they have started working on implanting the pacemakers for dogs. This is the atrial standstill when we talk of no P waves at all, QRS and a T wave. QRS and a T wave. This can happen in 2 conditions. Number 1, absence of P wave, hyperkalemia is one. Second is primary atrial muscle disease. Which are these conditions? Muscle tumors, cardiac muscle tumors, that is neoplasia. It could also be seen in atrial myopathy. It could be seen in particularly Springer spaniels, where you talk of scapulohumeral muscular atrophy. And in these conditions, you can find these atrial standstill. And probably in these kind of situations, you need to treat the underlying cause. Sometimes the prognosis is very, very poor in the cases. Now let's move on to, we talked about the conduction anomaly as related to what we talk about arrhythmias. Now, atrioventricular conduction abnormalities, which are SA node and AV node, when we talked about the conduction system, we talk in terms of the first degree, second degree heart block, and the third degree heart block. People would talk of it. Somebody writes on a case sheet saying that this is a case of first degree heart block based on an ECG. He will say where it is written as a first degree. It is never written there. You need to assess. How do we assess each of these? What does it mean? What do you mean by a first degree heart block? What it can talk of is, you look at these PR intervals. This is the P, and we know where the R is, more than 0.13 consistently. If you get like this, prolonged PR intervals, more than 0.13, and then there should be QRS for every P wave. There's a P wave, there's a QRS. There's a P, there's a QRS. Prolonged PR, this is what you talk of first degree heart block. And advantage for all of us, for all the cardiologists, is that this doesn't need. Okay, we really don't have to treat this because first degree heart block doesn't need treatment for it. Then we move on, missing probably exhibiting arrhythmia, missing of QRS complex in some. There's a P wave and you don't find a QRS. There's a P wave, fine, goes on, P, then you don't find. There's a P, no QRS, there's a P, no QRS, and P, there's a QRS like this. This can go on. Second degree heart block. This is also called the Mobitz type 1 heart block. People also called as Wenckebach heart block. P wave that is not followed by a QRS. Look at here, there's a P wave, there's a QRS, there's a T wave, there's a P wave, no QRS for this. There's a P wave, for this there is QRS, T, there is P, no QRS, there is P. So this is typically what you talk as second degree heart wave. P wave that is not followed by QRS. QRS complex is normal. PR interval progressively changes. You keep watching, it can change, starts as a way, and as it goes, it can become more, it can become less. And many a times this goes into the heart block, and each of those, when you check them, one is typically again second degree heart block. P, there's no QRS. This is the third stage, what you talk of. Even the second stage, many a times may not any treatment, but they're atropine responsive, so you can put them onto atropine when you need them. The Mobitz type 2 blocks are again different unto that. And now third degree blocks, when you talk of, look at the atrial rate and rhythm occurs independently. The rate and rhythm are not related to QRS. P, QRS, T, there's P, no QRS. That means no QRS for this, and there is no P for this. There is QRS and a T, there is P, no QRS. So it goes like this, independent. There's a QRS here, there's again P started. They're independent, it's not followed at all. Slows ventricular rhythm. Atrial rate is generally faster, and many a times, this kind of third degree blocks all need treatment. Atropine response and come to even prefer for a pacemaker. Third degree heart block, again, same way, there is, you can make out P, QRS, and T, P independently they occur. Is it lead 2? Is it lead 1? Is it lead 2? AV node block, as we talk, I'll note the absence of the QRS complex. Look at the PR interval. P, QRS, T, there's P, no QRS, P, QRS, T, P, no QRS. Goes on like this. This is a wandering pacemaker in different stages of that continuously, and these kind of ways are very different from that. The ventricular contraction of this, here is a normal PQRS. This is P, QRS, and a T. But now what happened next? There is no P, this is the QRS, this is the T. So why do you call premature? It occurred prior to the P wave. Then there's a P, QRS and T again went for, this is a VPC, another VPC. So VPC can be 1, they can be 2, they can be 3, they can be 4, together can go on. So the more the number of VPCs, more complicated the situations are perhaps. Now, this is what we talk of ventricular tachycardia. Look at this PQRS. If you look at this portion of the ECG, appears very normal. And now you had one, second one, third one. Again, all these are VPCs. In between, there's a normal complex. This is the ventricular tachycardia we talk of. And now ventricular tachycardia detected in a Holter ECG. You can make out all these ventriculars, so many of them. This animal, just to say that you send the patient home and you can record these kind of ways and identify what they are. This is the ventricular fibrillation. When you talk of this, here is a PQRST. Now look at all these. These are all chaotic, what you can talk of. Bizarre appearance of that, varying amplitudes, no P waves for anything, no QRS complex, no T wave, nothing of this. There's one complex, and this is the typical ventricular fibrillation. Where do you find these conditions? You'll find in shock, any kind of shock, more probably accidents, traumatic shock, sometimes even in proxemic shock, you'll find them. Myocardial damage, anything which can cause a damage, acid-base imbalances, you'll find this in anesthetic patients, you'll find all these. And probably when you get these kind of waves, you need to get activated for a resuscitation, as well as if facilities are available, go for a defibrillation as well. This is the ventricular asystole. When you talk of, you had P, you had R, you had S, and a T, which is probably 3 times that of a R wave. And long of them, and asystole, and then again starts of this. Again, very bad of the conditions of these. ST segment depression or coving, what I said earlier, this is a very good indicator. Probably look at this. This is a P wave, this is a QRS. This is like a saddle, this we call ST depression. Earlier we had seen coving. This is typically of an automobile accident, dogs which have a muscle injury directly onto the heart can get into this situation. And probably you can diagnose them based on ECG, which needs different data. ECG could also be used for electrolyte imbalance. People might ask me a question, why do we need to go for an electrolyte imbalance by an ECG? Why not we go for serum biochemistry? Yes, but on the table sometimes when you do, it's very important. Get cases. Probably you had a case of a seizure immediately after developing, and now you know very well that he has got epilepsy, and people would say epilepsy, and you record the temperature, it is 105, you will say pyrexia. Now, maybe if she has recently developed, it could be a case of eclampsia. Before we get onto that, we connect you start a drip many times. If you connect an ECG, you can make out what can happen. Low calciums lead on to prolonged QT. This is the QT interval. Prolonged QT intervals are direct indicators of hypocalcemia, and this could be used probably before you can talk of anything, infuse calcium into these eclampsia patients and save them. Otherwise, they can get into the stage of death, and they are not typically cases of epilepsy. So we need them. ECG is useful in this electrolyte imbalance very specifically. Similarly, hyperkalemia. Many cases of renal failure. You have a high level of potassium. Again, there, when you do this, you can do this. And when you do this, there are 2 things on this. One is absence of the P wave, that's one. Also talk in terms of the shortening of the QT interval. The pericardial effusion is another, what you talk of electrical alterance or a pericardial effusion. When you have large quantity of fluid accumulated, ECG is of a value for us, and you will have a low conduction, waves or amplitudes of a low wave, number 1. Number 2, this has to be differentiated more particularly in heavy breeds like the Labradors, which are heavy breeds, and there's a low conduction. Animals with high fat, also low conduction. But if all that is ruled out, and if it is a fluid in the pericardium, you could call them this. This is what you call as electrical alterance or pericardial effusion, could be diagnosed based on values of this kind way and could be useful. Yes. Now, finally, remember, what is that we need to remember on this? This is quite common. Not many people will talk of. Even in human side, they say that they did an ECG and they said everything fine. You go home and he goes to the bathroom, has a nice shave, and there people say, yes, he had a massive heart attack. So a normal heart may have an abnormal ECG. An ailing heart may have a normal ECG. Finding of ECG should be correlated with the results of other diagnostic tests like radiography and echocardiography, and finally come to a conclusion. And that is what the take home I would like to put on to you, that ECG should be used as a tool for diagnosis, for differential diagnosis, for monitoring of the patients, and also confirm them when facilities are available to you. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your patience.
Sir, thank you very much for your wonderful talk, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please exit from your presentation, sir.
Yeah, I'll come out. Stop sharing. You want me to stop the sharing?
Yeah.
Yes, I've done that. Now I can come back to the chat.
Yeah, sir, please.
Right. Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
I am very happy to share
Yeah.
that more than 100 comments they are available with me about
Okay.
it means excellent presentation.
Nice of you. Thank
The
you.
topic is really very interesting, very nice webinar. Even though some participants, they are congratulated to ISVM team for
Yes.
organizing such a amazing webinar, sir.
Yeah.
And sir, I'm really very, it means happy to share that senior ISVF member from our society, like Dr. Mandal sir, Dr. Nitin Bhatia sir, Dr. Yene Tipali sir,
Oh.
Dr. Umesh Dimri sir, Dr. Vinod Dut sir, and
Yes.
Dr. K. Satish Kumar sir, they have joined today's webinar, sir.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Again, yes, sir. And young ISVM brigade, that Dr. Bhojne sir, Dr. Bipin Kumar sir, Dr.
Oh.
Chetan, Dr. Dheeraj Gupta, Dr. H.K. Ratre, Dr.
Yes.
Meera Thakre, Dr. Manjura Madam, and Dr. Shilpa Rani. They have also joined our today's webinar, sir.
Very nice.
And students from Bangalore Veterinary College, students from our Mumbai Veterinary College, and students from all over India, they have also joined today's webinar, sir. And again,
Nice.
I'm happy to share that some foreign participants, they also joined.
Very nice.
Yeah. One participant from Pakistan, he has also joined, sir, and he has enjoyed today's presentation, sir.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, sir. Thank you very much for your it means excellent talk and giving us the knowledge about the basics of electrocardiography and its interpretation, sir. Quickly,
Yes.
I will take some 4 to 5 questions, sir.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Right.
Dr. Sagar, he willing to ask, sir. Sir,
Yep.
please let us know about the ECG equipment from Mumbai, which would be costing about rupees 2,000 and
Yes.
pocket-sized ECG equipment, sir. Will you
Yes.
highlight something on the availability of this
100%.
instrument and its
Yes.
application, sir?
Yes, this has been released by the BARC. Recently, I read about it. Earlier to that, there was a person who came to Bangalore. He came to my hospital and demonstrated. Very nice, and it's quite a tool, particularly for people who are practicing in suburban areas. And it gives, you can make a recording and take it to your place and then have the interpretation done, and you can put it on to your cardiologist and show it over there. Very good one, I would say, and needs a more way, but it's more of what you can say screening. It's a screening ECG machine, I would say, and will be very useful. Definitely will be very useful.
Thank you, sir. Again, sir, really very interesting question.
Yes.
Sir, generally, whenever ECG waves are there, okay,
Yes.
there are, it means A, B, C, D, E, F, G type of words we can able to use, sir. But why
Yes.
here in ECG, we are using PQRST only, sir?
Yeah, wonderful.
Really very wonderful, sir.
Yeah, this was one of the way I would say, and many a times I asked the question to quite a number of students, including the PhD exams. I used to ask them why this ECG was named as PQRST and not as ABCD. To tell you very frankly, I haven't got an answer for it. Till today. Why it should be started as that? Maybe what it talked was somewhere, like what people talk of is, if I go back to the old book, they said it talked about polarization and the P word came, and polarization and depolarization when they got it, since they started with polarization as P, followed it as QRS. Like what you talk of in the ABO blood crew system, it was never a ABO system. They said A antigen, B antigen, no antigen, that means zero, but people called it as ABO system. So similarly here, it became PQRST.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Sir, there is a doubt from Dr. Deepika.
Yeah.
Sir, I have done ECG and USG. When I should tell client to go for ECG and USG,
Yes.
because two diagnostic modalities are there, sir. One is
Yes.
ECG and second is USG. So
Yes.
when I should tell client to go for ECG and USG. And second,
Yes.
sir, again she has asked,
Yeah.
even we do ECG, it is necessary to do the USG in cases of DCM,
Yes.
dilated cardiomyopathy, sir.
Yes, very right. See, there are two aspects of that. ECG is related to conduction anomaly and chamber enlargement. ECG is necessary for assessing the conduction anomaly. Ultrasonography doesn't talk about conduction anomaly. The ultrasonography and echocardiography talks about the total of the biometry. It is the study related to the size, then the volume, ejection, etc., etc. But they're again related to this. So as a first step, what would anybody do is an ECG, and you find an anomaly with any of these, go for an ultrasonography. But unfortunately, what the reality is, dilated cardiomyopathy cases may not show a great variation in the ECG. It doesn't. So where really it becomes is arrhythmias. Arrhythmias, nothing can replace. ECG has to be there, whereas cardiomyopathies, ultrasonography and Doppler are the best.
Thank you, sir. Sir, again, there is question
Yes.
from Dr. Rijwan Khan.
Yeah.
Sir, when only RR interval is irregular
Yeah.
and rest all other waves are normal,
Yeah.
when it was normal, what does it indicate, sir?
Yeah. This talks about the animal is highly excited. Animal is highly excited. It's not calming down, and probably you need to calm down and take the ECG again. And it also coincides with the amount of heart beating. Again, talks about it.
Sir, just I will disturb you for a couple of seconds. Just
Yes.
open your video also, sir, please.
Yes. Yeah.
So it will
Okay.
be interactive for all of them.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'll do it. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's okay now? No. One second.
Dr. Nilay, just check, sir will be there in frame.
1 second.
Yeah. Please, sir. Please, sir.
Okay. See what happens with these RR irregularly being regular, regularly being irregular. Both can happen. Irregularly regular, regularly irregular. Both phenomena occur. And this talks in terms of what you talk of is the condition of the animal during your recording. And such other animals would need a sedation and then recording. Might be mild sedations are necessary on them. And also talks in terms of maybe if it happens, such animals would definitely need an ultrasound. They would need an ultrasound because it talks in terms of the volume of the blood pumped out in the phenomena in that. Though directly it doesn't go in terms of the conduction anomaly could also influence the ejection of the blood from the ventricles. Because the moment you talk of RR, it's always related to the ventricles and that. So it talks about a ventricular dysfunction.
Thank you, sir. Sir, first of all, I would like to welcome Dr. Sushovan Roy, sir. He is
very nice
on our webinar, sir, and he has just asked one question.
Yes.
In case ECG, TMT, and ECO
Okay.
was normal, but abnormality is observed in angiography. Kindly explain the reason.
Very right. As I said,
thank you, Dr. Sushovan Roy, sir, for joining our ISM webinar. Thank you very much.
Obviously, ECG is not everything. ECG is not 100% foolproof, effective, sensitive. What all you can talk of for cardiology? It's one of the tool. What it talks of? It talks only about conduction and to some extent chamber enlargement. But when you talk in terms of angiography, it talks about all your vessels, biometry, everything on that. So obviously totally different. I agree with them and we'll have to go by that. We cannot go by saying that ECG is everything. When all other methods are not available, yes, ECG was. I would say ECG is one of the diagnostic tool, not everything. And ECG has to be combined with history, combined with radiography, combined with ultrasonography. Generally, you get 90% success. If you combine with angiography, you get 95% success. If you combine with MRI, all other scanners, you get 100% success.
Sir, you have an opinion that every diagnostic modality having its own advantages and own
Yes.
disadvantages.
100%.
Yeah. Sir,
For
there
example,
is again
let's
one
look at,
interesting question from
yes,
Dr. Gurukar. He wants
yes,
to ask which pre-medication is preferred for
yeah.
recording ECG in excited dogs, sir.
Any sedative which doesn't have an effect on the heart, to generalize, I would put it like that. And maybe the moment I say that, people will ask me, will xylazine suffice? No. You can think in terms of chlorpromazine, that's good enough. You can use them. Diazepam to some extent is okay. Triflupromazine is okay, you can use that. But only thing is you should use them with caution, because you know very well that you already are handling a cardiac patient. Sedation, what it's going to do to the animal is equally important than that. Maybe certain times even just painkillers will do. You need to calm the animal down and then use it. Do not go into the severe way of medication. And generally, medication or tranquilization versus ECG do not have a much of a difference in terms of interpretation. Though their values could be, little variation could be there, but they are not statistically significant. You can accept them.
Sir, I will take this opportunity to congratulate you again, because, sir, again some questions and some remarks, they are available in my
Okay.
chat box. All they are congratulating our ISVM, especially to you for organizing such a wonderful webinar, sir. Really, congratulations to you for giving some time, because I know, sir, you are very busy person and you are because since couple of days we are saying you that in busy schedule also you have given time for our trial and for today's webinar also, sir. Really, it means highly appreciable thing from our it means appreciating thing from our side, sir.
The
Sir,
only
I will quickly take some couple of questions, sir.
yes.
There is again one question. What type of changes will we expect in cases of hyponatremia, sir?
Hyponatremia.
Yes, sir.
In ECG, as
Yes,
I have
sir.
gone through hyponatremias and the ECG alterations, I haven't come across. I really do not know on that, on the ECG of that. No, I really have no answer on that, because these are the ones which have a direct effect on the musculature. Potassium, calcium, these are the ones. Sodium, to what extent or what a change it can produce in the ECG, I haven't come across today.
Sir, just I will take a couple of questions again, because
Yes.
they're highlighting on my chat
Yes,
box.
yes. I'm again
If
seeing
lead
that.
2R is reverse,
Yeah.
what is problem of heart?
2 R's are what I saw, sorry.
If in lead 2
Yeah.
is there, R is reverse, what
Okay.
is problem of heart?
Normally, it should be a positive wave. It talks in terms of a conduction anomaly wherein it needs. You need definitely, you have to, cannot interpret saying that straight away that R negative is something different unto that. Such animals would say that you need to go in for an echocardiography. You need to go for. You cannot conclude based on that negative itself.
Okay. So again, sir, really very interesting question. It has highlighted on my chat box.
Okay.
Suggest treatment for common cardiac issues which are commonly noticed on ECG, sir.
In fact, beginning itself, I wanted to ask Dr. Chandrakant, should I restrict it to interpretation or should I go into the treatment? I think Chandrakant should take another topic, because cardiac treatment is totally different unto that, because each of them are totally different. You cannot just simply say based on ECG, go for a treatment. ECG can give you a guide as to what the conditions are. So you need to identify the underlying cause and go for that. Only thing what you can talk about is if there is arrhythmias and that. So to saturate the arrhythmia, what kind of drug, what kind of medication? Because that alone is not enough, because these kind of situations would also end up in edema. They might also lead up into pulmonary edema. They could also go into the generalized edema. So what happens here is all these would finally end up as congestive heart failure. So when you're talking about this, generally people who talk of congestive heart failure as a broad topic and talk about all the treatments of that. So for example, as I said earlier, sinus arrhythmia, no treatment necessary. Morbid's type 1, no treatment necessary. Morbid's type 2, treatment not necessary. Third degree block, you would need to put them on atropine. You need to put them under medication like that. Dilated cardiomyopathies, you need to obviously put them onto ACE inhibitors. You need to use the inotropes, maybe starting with digoxin, end up with pimoben. You need to go in for that. Similarly, diuretics definitely are necessary. You cannot just simply go by this ECG interpretation. This is the finding. This is the treatment. No, you cannot. You cannot generalize like that. It also certain other things are necessary wherein you go in for lignocaine therapy. You go in for atropine therapy. You make a combination of the therapy. You use inhibitor, ACE inhibitor. You use a diuretic. You make a combination with ionophore, calcium channel blockers. You need to make a combination because ECG alone cannot make a diagnosis of a condition. It's a finding. For example, just to give a correlation, the moment blood urea nitrogen level goes up based on biochemistry, what is the treatment? No. Blood urea nitrogen can get elevated in a kidney problem, it could be a hepatic problem, it could be a toxicity. So we go by the treatment in the same fashion. So it should not treat ECG as everything for cardiac problem.
Sir.
Pimobendan indication, definitely. Pimobendan indication is an ionophore. All of you know very well that earlier, where all probably you were using digoxin has been replaced many a times by the pimoben. It's a better medication for dilated cardiomyopathy management of that, and also for any majority of the congestive heart failure cases of that. And cost is a criteria. The advantage versus disadvantage, if we look at those, the earlier medications probably produce gastroides for a long period when you use it. Pimobendan compounds are probably much safer, you can say that, and recovery is much faster and more efficacious.
Yeah. Sir, again, one question related with the feline medicine from our professor from Mumbai Veterinary College, Dr. Dalvi. Thyrotoxicosis in cat. What is the typical pattern of ECG is observed, sir?
I did not bring any of the things on the cat here.
Okay.
Maybe on a cat you make a separate way. Okay. Similarly, ECG in primates, all these topic I confined it to the dog. So that's why let me not talk onto this. Okay. On feline primates, let me not talk today on that. Okay.
Sir, I will take now last question.
Yes.
Sir, kindly give us some information of source of getting a basic level ECG equipment for general ECG practice in our canines and felines, sir.
You get
from Dr. Ramanna VY.
From Andhra Pradesh.
Sir, I want any. It means only name has been highlighted on my chat box, sir.
Okay. See,
I will collect that information and let you know, sir.
There are many of them. If you can go in for either the human model or the veterinary model, the lowest of the models will cost you anything between 15 to 20,000 rupees, single channels. If you want to go in for the multi-channels, they will all cost you anything between 60,000, 80,000, 1 lakh, and you have machines up to even 4 lakhs and that. And there are many companies which are offering, you have machines on the BPL, you have machines which are all very popular. You also have the GE machines which have come of late. And you can use them. Human machines are equally good enough, you can use them. There are many models available and quite sensitive. You can use them. Not an issue at all. Similarly, stethoscope, you can start from the student microscope for attendance to the best of the stethoscopes. And you could also use an electronic stethoscope, which will cost around 1 lakh, and it has a storing capacity for 10 ECG, 10 of the auscultations. You can use that. Yes.
Sir, there is really very wonderful suggestion from all the participants. I will discuss the suggestion with ISVM President, General Secretary, and Executive Committee of the ISVM. Still, they are requesting to have a hands-on training on ECG and its interpretation. Sir, I will look in the matter and try to come up with the program so that we can have a couple of days training, hands-on training program as far as the reading of the ECG and all, sir.
Oh, very much, very right.
We will just check the possibility, sir. It means very thankful to our Honorable President and General Secretary that they are kind enough to permit us to conduct such workshop or training, sir. We will take it in active consideration with discussion with my colleague Dr. Nilesh also, sir.
Oh, very nice. You can consider some of the institutions where you have all the facilities, where you have ultrasonography coupled with ECG. You can very well do that. See, what we normally do it is, when we do the ECGs, we follow it with an X-ray and we also do an ultrasound and we go for aortic cardiography. So we try to appreciate each of that in a good way, and that will be wonderful.
Sir, again, 2 questions they are highlighted. Sir,
Yes.
can you suggest some good book to
Oh,
learn
yeah.
about ECG and
Yeah.
cardiology?
Canine Cardiology. Canine Cardiology by Telly. Okay. It's a famous book. Interpretation of ECG by again Tilly, right? And canine and feline arrhythmias by Tilly. Everything by Tilly. Everything. You have so many books of that. Okay. Canine cardiology books. Very good on that. We can do that. And now you could get on to any of these the centers where they are working a lot on cardiology, and you get the notes on that. You could also get enough information from the Warsaw. If you get onto the section on cardiology, you will get a lot of information onto that. And also you'll get it on the American Veterinary Hospital Association and the Cardiology Society, which regularly issue guidelines for majority of them. Can get a lot of information on that. Very right on cardiac sonography. Really you'll have to do an ultrasonography, particularly echocardiography. You need to make a hands-on workshop because position of these animals are so important. I'm going through a huge book on veterinary cardiology dash ultrasonography and that, and wherein maybe your position alteration can make a lot of difference on that. So you need to work on a hands-on workshop for echocardiography. Otherwise, ultrasonography, what you can talk of both Doppler as well as normal, both. It will be wonderful. You need that. And
Yes, sir. I will work on that, sir. Sir, last question I will take, sir. What machine of ECG one can prefer to buy 6 channel or 12 channel? And why we need to select 6 channel or 12 channel? Can you explain it, reason for that?
I'll put it like this. See, you have more money, you're a big hospital, you go for a 6 channel or a 12 channel. The regular single channel machines equally do the job for you. Not a big issue at all. And if you go for a multi-channel, the advantage is simultaneously you can record lead 1, 2, 3 and then AVR, AVL, AVF and exploring leads. Otherwise, what are you going to do? One after another manually, lead 1, lead 2, lead 3 and automatically even that records. Only thing is people might say it might take a little more paper. Not an issue at all. They're equally sensitive equipments. In fact, we use 2 machines, one single channel as well as multi-channel. I don't find much difference except that in the multi-channel machines, we use less paper. Whereas in the single channel machines, we use more paper. That's it. Other than that, it makes no difference on that. Not a much of a difference on that. In the multi-channel machines, what you have is interpretation is given by the machine itself, which could be a guide to beginners more particularly. And that could be advantageous.
Yeah. Sir, really it means we are very thankful to you for sparing time for ISBM and delivering this wonderful webinar on our ISBM Cisco forum, sir. At the last, sir, I would like to request Dr. Shilpa to propose the vote of thanks for today's webinar. And sir, she is student of you only, sir.
Yes. She worked with me for many years and one of my best students, I would say.
Dr. Shilpa is there. I do request Dr. Shilpa, please.
Yes, I'm here. Very good
evening, Dr. Shilpa.
A very good evening.
Hi, Shilpa.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Nice to see you after a long time.
Yeah.
A very good evening. I'm Dr. Shilpa Rani. On behalf of ISVM Life members, I would like to thank Dr. Yatiraj for giving us thumb rules and practical tips to use ECG in diagnosing cardiac arrhythmias. I would also like to thank the organizing committee, Dr. Norial, President ISVM, Dr. R. Ramprabhu, General Secretary ISVM, the webinar coordinators who are doing a wonderful job, Dr. Galdhar, Dr. Nilesh Sindhu, Dr. Sujit Kumar, and Dr. Shankar Kumar Singh. And last but not the least, our knowledge partners, Zydus. Thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation and all the audience who were for giving such wonderful questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shilpa, for proposing the vote of thanks. Behalf of Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine, I again thankful to all the participants for participating in this webinar and making this webinar as a grand success. I'm again thankful to Yatiraj sir for delivering this wonderful webinar. Thank you, sir. With this, I will take the leave of all.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
All. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Nilesh, good night.
Thank you, Dr. Nilesh, for supporting and helping me to get into all this. Okay, we'll keep learning.
Thank you, sir.
And, thanks, Chandrakant, for the